Many Magic the Gathering players ask the question, is Vince chewing on the boot? Is he shilling for Wizards of the Coast? Because there's no secret here that I'm fucking excited for the Warhammer 40K decks. They arrive on October 7th. They are very exciting to me, but I do want to unpack the question as to whether or not they're worth it to buy at this current price point. This isn't going to be the comprehensive kind of video that Prof does. His videos are absolutely de facto the best thing to go to if you want to compare different products and figure out what's inside them and whether it's worth it to buy it from both a numerical sense of what's in them and reprints and so on, and also he talks, you know, what's subject to things like gameplay too. But I felt like doing a video for this product in particular because I've been so positive about these products for the most part. I love them, I've bought multiples myself, but they did bring up questions around how much should we pay for these kinds of things, considering only in the last couple of years you've had commander decks that were £20 or around 20 bucks. And when I say pounds and bucks kind of interchangeably in this video, mainly because the cost of product in the UK is just the dollar price changed to the pound price. And to be honest, our economy is crashing through the fucking floor anyway thanks to the death of Queen Liz. So it pretty much is the same price now. Hooray! But with those £20 price points and then these commander products being quite a lot different, perhaps even more generous than your average commander product, I did want to talk about what really is the value proposition of a commander precon. But before we do that, I need to be able to pay my mortgage. But first, a message from today's sponsor, the maker of delicious and healthy cereal, Magic Spoon. I don't think it's much of a secret that I'm a bit of a child when it comes to food, and I often indulge in impulses that my parents wouldn't allow me to. For example, I really like cereal, both as a breakfast and as a snack. Get some milk on those lovely little morsels. But we all know that cereal can also be full of crap and not great for you. I've been trying to eat better and get down the gym myself, so Magic Spoon has helped with that. It's a lean and tasty breakfast. 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 40 grams of protein, and only 4 to 5 net grams of carbohydrates. It's keto-friendly, gluten, grain, and soy-free, and low-carb, so it fits a whole wide variety of diets. It really scratches that cereal itch whilst I am also conscious of what I'm putting into my body. Magic Spoon are offering my viewers a discount when they make their own variety boxes where you can pick from your favourite flavours like cocoa or fruity, frosted, peanut butter. Oh man, I love the peanut butter. Cookies and cream and maple waffle too. And psst, fellow Brits and Canadians, I guess. They ship to Canada and the UK. Would you look at that? Click the link below and get some Magic Spoon for yourself today. Build a variety box using the code KENOBI and get 5% off your order. If you haven't tried the peanut butter, it's absolutely my favourite and I cannot recommend it enough. They're so confident that you'll be happy with it. They've got a 100% happiness guarantee system. So if you don't like it, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. So hit that link, use the code KENOBI at checkout, or go to magicspoon.com/Kenobi, get 5% off your order, and tell me in the comments below which flavours you picked up and which are your favourites. There are 4 commander decks coming on the 7th of October. This is the Necrons, the Forces of the Imperium, the Ruinous Powers, and the Tyrannid Swarm. And then there is a further 4 products in addition to that, which are the collector edition foil versions of these. These things are fully foiled out on a new foiling called Surge Foiling. I'll put something on screen here. I'll probably grabbing one of the people who've managed to get this product way before I did. To use as an example on screen. For full transparency, I have bought 2 copies of each of the decks, and I have bought a foil copy of the Chaos deck, because I don't think we're going to get a foil Be'lakor anytime soon. I'm going to talk more about the collector's edition and the FOMO around that later in the video. A Commander Precon has been a thing that I have loved for a very long time. The original 2011 Precons are some of my favourite Magic product of all time. I did a whole video talking about, and as a homage to those more recently, I talked about how the new cards that they put in those decks, things like Scavenging Ooze for example, were a net positive for Magic as a whole. There is an ongoing conversation point around the fact that printing directly into Commander ruins Commander. Hell, I felt like I was in that camp before as well. And I know the Prof, Brian, is as well, so we'll probably argue about this in Dice to Removal soon when we inevitably talk about the Commander decks from Warhammer. But I actually think the new cards are one of the exciting drives and draws to a Precon product. Otherwise, in reality, you could pick up the vast majority of one of these Precons as bulk from a store or online retailer. Of course, the overall price of these decks tends to be way above the price point that you pay on entrance. So let's unpack that a little bit. Even the Kaldheim and Zendikar decks that were £20 at release were around $80 to $90 worth of reprints up at release. Again, taking this number from one of the props videos, one of the is it worth it to buy video. And then your average non-£20 precon, your normal precon price, which is around the £40 mark, will give you somewhere between $60 and $120 worth of reprints and new cards usually. It's very hard to really compare the decks and the actual cost of purchase because that price is always in flux for a start. So sometimes you're comparing it before the deck is out. Editor's note there, I'm not being very clear in the original video because I'm rambling a little bit. What I'm talking about is that the decks tend to be worth more than what you're buying them for. You're buying a deck at £20 and getting $90 worth of cards if you bought them individually. And this is a common occurrence with precons, especially commander precons. It's one way to judge whether it's worth it to buy something or not. Of course, if the value of the cards inside were not really worth it, you might as well just buy the singles, pre-order them, or buy them from a website, right? So the cost of the stuff inside tends to need to outweigh what you'd be able to get for them for individually. And once the deck is out, then obviously the supply starts to outstrip the demand, or catch up with the demand at least, and the prices plummet. So it's a very difficult thing to use. There is a lot of building work going on around my home today, so there might be some noise in the background. I'm trying to record between spots of soaring. So like I said, when you get a precon with no new cards, things like the Planeswalker decks, then you want good reprints, solid reprints, things that like the event decks, for example. So there's a few elements that bring value to a Commander precon product like this. There is the reprints, the reprinting of older cards that are worth money that you want to get hold of, normally bring the price of them down. There's then the element of new cards that bring new gameplay experiences to Commander and other formats where those cards are legal too. There's the kind of two main points. There is a third one of the out-of-the-box experience of how much value can you get playing with a deck out of the box. And in reality, a lot of the precons aren't amazing. There have been good years, there's been bad years, right? So that brings us to the Warhammer decks being completely unique to all of that. Firstly, the reprints are reasonable in these. The Necron deck has the best reprints with things like Cage Sun, for example, but those reprints are all themed around Warhammer 40K. Half of them have new art, and the other half have new art to Magic that's been taken out of the 40K intellectual property. So even the reprints have some extra added value in a sense if you value Warhammer 40K as a intellectual property coming into Magic. Then we come to the new cards element. Usually on the £40 or $40 or whatever the fucking cash money currency we're going to say, usually those decks have somewhere between 10 and 15 new cards, depending on the year. And then the $20 ones, where I think the Zendikar ones had 3 or 4 new cards each, and Kaldheim had around 7. The Warhammer decks have 40 each. Some of them have as many as 42. This is an insane and unprecedented amount of new cards being printed into a Commander product, the only comparison really being Commander Legends or a similar draft product. Even things like Plane Chase and Arch Enemy didn't introduce this many new cards, even when we include the planes themselves and the Arch Enemy schemes, which aren't playable outside of those respective sort of tertiary formats. And then on top of all that, we have a comprehensive battle box experience if you get all 4. You have 4 of the forces from Warhammer 40K's tabletop wargaming, but transferred into Magic the Gathering. So the out-of-the-box experience is kind of unique and brings a different element to it than a normal precon would, in the sense that there's a battle box element to having all 4. The point I'm trying to make here is that it's very, very difficult to compare the Warhammer 40k decks to existing Magic the Gathering precons. It was funny watching the Command Zone do their sort of preview video for the Necron deck, because they treat it like a normal one, and it's just not. It's such an unprecedented and unfamiliar territory that we will see repeated. We're going to have the Doctor Who deck show up with 20, 30, 40 new cards next year. And again, we're going to have people previewing them and talking about how they fit into the flavour of the lore and the context of that different fandom. And I found that kind of exciting. On the topic of people who are probably sitting there raging, really unhappy about the other IPs coming into Magic like Doctor Who and Warhammer, I do want to say this, and this will be an expanded video at some point. Other card games tend to just die. So for example, I had a friend recently said he loved the living card game for Game of Thrones that came out a few years ago. Can't get a game in his local store anymore because it came, it went, it's gone, it's dead. When you have this stuff come in, like the Warhammer 40k Commander decks, they're not going to die like the Age of Sigmar card game did a couple of years ago. You're going to still be able to play that comprehensive game experience I say comprehensive, that like insulated gaming experience of the Warhammer 40K Magic crossover, or play it within the confines of Magic itself. In essence, Magic is like a medium through which we can explore other intellectual properties in a card game that won't be dead in a year or two. I like that a lot. At the time of recording, the Magic the Gathering Warhammer 40k decks are around £43 to £45 in the UK. I'm an old man, so £40 is the price point for a brand new video game for me. Although I just went and checked to see if I was going absolutely mad. If you want to buy FIFA 23, for example, on release from Game in the UK, it's going to be, I think the cheapest one is £55 for a next-gen console, or £35 for a Switch game. So in essence, I see each deck as like the price of a new video game experience. Will I get as much joy and fun out of it as that? And in short, yeah. I'm a big believer that in a £40 to £50 video game release that gives me 10 hours of enjoyment is a solid single-player experience. That's better value for money than the average movie ticket at £14 for a less than 2 hour experience, if we start to do money to time spent. And with these precons, I bought multiples to do all sorts of building stuff for them, which I'll come to in a moment. But like playing them out of the box for 2 or 3 games of EDH is going to get towards 10 hours, because that's how EDH goes, right? At that point, I've got my fill, I've got my money's worth in terms of an entertainment property with throwaway cash, but I'm left with cards that will have value going forward. And these decks have 40 new game pieces each, some of these demanding pre-order prices that are absurd already. The Necron deck, for example, having cards that are bound to combo and kill people being pre-ordered at $10 or $20. We've got the Custodian in the Imperium deck pre-ordering for over $10 because it gives you commander protection from everything. There are cards in here that will have value going forward. And the reprints as well, things like Farseeks and not Kodama's Explosive Visitations and all sorts of stuff in the Tyranid deck that are staples of Commander but with new art on them. And then you're going to have the opportunity to build around cards in these decks as well. The commanders themselves are all quite interesting. I've got a whole tier list on that coming out later in the week in terms of where I rate them in terms of interest, thematic identity, and flavour. But I can't help but think that £40 for 40 new cards, new commanders, and a gameplay experience out of the box that, in my opinion, having played with them already, is better than most precons, is an absolutely solid value proposition. The problem is, it brings us to this question around how much should commander decks be usually. We had this issue, and Prof brought it up then. When the Zendikar and the Kaldheim decks dropped at like $20 each, it does beg the question why we're spending $40 on the same product with a few more newer cards. And then if you swing the pendulum the whole other way, if you come to the $40, £40 proposition on the other end, which is the Warhammer 40k decks, you've got $20 over here, $40 here, and the normal precons here. These decks have 40 new cards each, a lot more development and time and planning going into those, right? You then got back and forth between 2 companies, and intellectual property coming in from outside the game. You've got new art assets as well as art assets borrowed from the other game. There's so much more new stuff in this £40 commander deck that when you look at a normal commander precon, it can't possibly be £40 anymore. Surely. I generally believe the new Warhammer 40k decks might be my favourite precons ever made, but I am biased because I love 40k. And at a £40 price point, I think that's a pretty reasonable place to be, especially compared to the original precons, or the precons that come with 2 cards from a collector booster strapped in to try and make the value proposition seem a bit better than the £20 ones they're selling 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. At this point, we've got 2 examples of how to do the product right, which makes all the other precons look kind of dumb. I guess that begs the question, if they were to put 40 new cards in each precon that they have with the Warhammer decks, would I be happy with that? If you asked me a few years ago, I would have said no, but at this point, Pandora's box is open. I don't know if I've just been beaten around the head with it so much that I'm okay with it. So I think the base level cost of these things is great. There is an element of people being fearful of FOMO, the fear of missing out, the idea they can't reprint these cards later. It's a bit up in the air. They said they can, but they said they could about the Walking Dead cards. We haven't seen that either. So people are like, do I need to pick these up now because you won't get a Marneus Calgar reprint down the line? And that's still a discussion point. I did a whole video on that. I'm not going to labour that too much now. But on the upside, these things are meant to be just printed into the ground in terms of if people still want them, they'll get printed and put onto shelves. They are print to demand as much as we know what that means from Wizards. So don't be fearful these are going to sell out and then hike in price. I've been told by a source I cannot name that these will continue to get printed for as far and as long as they know that source knows. So they should just be around for quite some time for you to pick up. The other thing though is the collector editions. At time of recording, these are available for around £120-ish in the UK, although they're out of stock in most websites now. And I've heard gross stories of these just rocketing up in price as the decks were revealed, and we saw there was going to be staples in these like Biotransference and other cards in the Necron deck. I am fearful, and I'm basically buying into fear of missing out here in FOMO. I'm fearful that Be'lakor, for example, a card that I'm looking to build a deck around, a character and unit that I really like in 40k, I'm scared that we're not going to get a foil version of this ever again. We're not going to get an actual reprint of Be'lakor. We might get like a magicified version, the universe is within, as they call it, where it gets given a new name and gets reprinted in foil and non-foil. But actual Be'lakor in foil, I doubt we'll ever see again. So I've ordered the Chaos deck to get a foil Magnus, a foil Be'lakor, a foil Bloodthirst, and a lot of other things that, again, I don't know if we'll ever see these versions of them again. I bought into it. I bought into the fear of missing out. There's always that secondary cost element to Magic, isn't there? It's like, oh, am I getting good value for money? What's the EV? What's the return on investment on buying this product? And I find it so strange when buying basically a toy to play with. But the collector's market is there. And I can't say I'm not a collector. I'm not a collector in the sense that I hoard stuff and slab it and never play with it. But I have folders full of cool, fanciful foils and shit. So it'd be hypocritical to say that the collector element being part of Magic is a bad taste in my mouth, but when it comes to buying products at this price point, it certainly is a bad taste in my mouth. This is the most expensive precon we've ever seen, and we've seen full foil precons before with the premium, the burn deck and the reanimated deck, the Graveborn decks. We've seen this before at a much lower price, but they know there's a fear of missing out. They know there's a collectible market there on the other side of the Games Workshop because they sell and sell out of collectible versions of book covers and stickers and pins and shit every other week. But the upside is that in spite of the deck being absurdly expensive, well, there's an argument that £100 or £120 for 100 cards, all in foil, is, you know, £1.20 a card, £1.20 a foil. And most people watching this who are entrenched Magic players have spent way more than £1.20 on foils before, so that might be an okay value proposition, I guess. But it is a cosmetic. It is an upgrade to an existing product that I think is a good value proposition for those who want to be the whales and the collectors. In some ways, these products existing and being parallel to the normal product and having no unique game pieces and just being a scarce collector version of is the ideal. It's almost like the platonic ideal. I've talked about this before about Thalia, Guardian of Throne being a card that can be bought for like less than €4, whilst some foils are like 60 or 80 bucks. And I think that's great, and that's what we should be striving for. And having non-collector and collector versions is doing that to current standard cards and standard prices too. So ultimately, I do think the collector decks are an absurd price, really, at the end of the day, even though I bought one of them. But it doesn't really fucking matter because they're a collectible version of something else that's coming out that is readily available, supposedly, according to people I've spoken to, will be readily available for quite some time. So it's just a cool, shinier version for people. The funny thing is, though, I think the foils kind of look a bit shit, if we're honest. But I bought it anyway because I'm desperate to get myself a foil Be'lakor, foil Abaddon, and foil Magnus. Oh my god, I am the whale. So ultimately, £40 for an out-of-the-box, brand new experience with more unique elements and game pieces than any other product in the history of Magic, in terms of precons at least, is really good. And the fact that there's a collectible, expensive version of that is not something that really upsets me in the slightest. I think there is a knee-jerk, adverse, almost farcical element to seeing that price point for Commander decks at £500. But then you come around to it and realise that you don't need them. They're there if you want to. They're going to, in some ways, line the coffers of Wizards of the Coast and pay on behalf of those of us that don't want to buy that shit. So I'm going to go on record as saying that the Commander precons for Warhammer 40k are my favourite precon product ever made, or at least on par with the original Commander decks that I love and hold a nostalgic place in my heart for. I think they're a great value proposition. I think they're definitely worth buying if you're going to play with them. Don't just buy them to hoard them. There's no need, especially if they're going to get printed into oblivion. And I really hope we return to 40k in the future. That's nothing to do with the value of these decks and what we should pay for them, but I just really hope it happens. So in some ways, buy them up, kids, because they're more likely to return. Okay, it's unusual for me to be so wholesome and positive about decisions made by the mothership, but sometimes they get it right, and I really think they did this time. perhaps more so than I did with Infinity. Lastly, I just want to talk about what I'm doing with them. I've got a set of them I'm going to sleeve up and have a battle box, unedited gameplay experience of the original 40k Precons, almost like a history little box that's going to be in my cupboard and come out when friends come around. I'm going to upgrade, edit, and remove and change the other ones. I'm going to build Be'lakor. I might build the Kellenwolf as well. And then if I get some sent for me as promos from Wizards of the Coast, they may say it's there as set dressing for a while as a collectible in essence. And then I've picked up the foil one because for Chaos, so I can build Be'lakor off of those pieces. So have you picked any up? Let me know in the comment section below which ones you have picked up, and do you think I'm right in my call that this is probably the best value proposition we've had for a Commander product ever? And also, did you buy any collector's edition ones? Let me know in the comment section below. I've been Vince, the PleasantKenobi on the internet. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.